story arc. The shadow in the classroom. Mr. Thompson had been teaching at Lincoln High School for over a decade. He had heard his fair share of ghost stories and urban legends from students, but he never put much stock in them. That changed one autumn evening when he was staying late to grade papers. The school is quiet, the usual hustle and bustle of students long gone. Mr. Thompson's classroom was at the far end of the building near the old wing that was no longer in use. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the room. He was deep in concentration when he felt a sudden chill. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees, and he instinctively glanced up at the doorway. Standing there just beyond the threshold was a shadowy figure. At first, Mr. Thompson thought it was a student playing a prank. "Who's there?" He called out, but there was no response. The figure did not move or make a sound. It was just a dark silhouette, featureless and eerie. Mr. Thompson stood up, his heart pounding. He took a step toward the door, but the shadowy figure remained motionless. He switched on the hallway light, but the figure vanished as soon as the light flooded the corridor. Confused and a bit shaken, he dismissed it as a trick of the light and went back to his desk. A week later, Mr. Thompson stayed late again. He had nearly forgotten the incident until the classroom door creaked open. He looked up to see the same shadowy figure standing there, this time closer than before. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He could feel an intense, cold presence in the room. "Who are you?" He demanded, but the figure remained silent. He approached the door, his heart racing, but the figure disappeared again as he reached for the light switch. This time, Mr. Thompson couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. He decided to do some research about the old wing of the school. He discovered that the wing had been closed off years ago after a tragic incident. A student named Emily had died there under mysterious circumstances. Some said she had been bullied and had taken her own life. Others claimed it was an accident. Her death had left a dark mark on the school, and the old wing was shuttered soon after. Mr. Thompson couldn't help but wonder if the shadowy figure was somehow connected to Emily's death. The next evening, he stayed late again, determined to confront whatever was haunting his classroom. As expected, the shadowy figure appeared. This time, Mr. Thompson spoke calmly. "Emily, if that's you, I want to help you." The figure did not move, but the room grew colder. If he felt a presence, as if someone was standing right next to him. "You don't have to be alone," he continued. "Tell me what happened." For a moment, it seemed like nothing would happen. Then the lights flickered violently and the shadowy figure moved toward him. Mr. Thompson felt an icy grip on his arm and a whisper echoed in his ear, "Help me." The figure vanished and the room returned to normal. Mr. Thompson knew he had to find out more about Emily. He contacted the school's old staff and students, piecing together the tragic story. It turned out that Emily had been tormented by a group of bullies, and on the night of her death, she'd been locked in the old wing as a cruel prank. Desperate and scared, she had tried to escape but had fallen down the stairs, leading to her untimely death. Mr. Thompson decided to hold a small memorial for Emily, inviting the current students to honor her memory. During the ceremony, he felt a warm presence, as if Emily was finally at peace. The shadowy figure never appeared again in his classroom, and the eerie chill was gone. But Mr. Thompson knew that the school still held many secrets, and he couldn't help but wonder if other spirits lingered, waiting for someone to uncover their stories. Story 2. The haunted library. Mrs. Reynolds had been the librarian at Westwood High School for over 15 years. The library was her sanctuary, filled with the comforting scent of old books and the soft rustle of turning pages. But there was one corner of the library that always felt different, colder, and she avoided it whenever possible. So there was in that corner near the ancient oak shelves that strange things began to happen. Books would fall off the shelves for no apparent reason, and students often reported seeing shadows flitting by out a corner of their eyes. Mrs. Reynolds dismissed these claims as overactive imaginations, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, after everyone had left, Mrs. Reynolds stayed late to organize the new book arrivals. The library was eerily quiet, the only sound being the hum of the air conditioning. She was stacking books on the shelf when she heard a faint whisper. She turned around, but there was no one there. "Who's there?" she called out, but only silence answered her. She shook her head and continued working, but the whisper came again, louder this time. It sounded like a child's voice, soft and pleading. "Help me," it said. Mrs. Reynolds' heart raced. She followed the sound to the back corner of the library where the cold spot was. The temperature dropped even further as she approached. and she could see her breath in the air. Suddenly, a book flew off the shelf, landing at her feet. It was an old leather-bound diary. She picked it up and opened it. Pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was neat and small. The diary belonged to a young girl named Clara, who had attended the school many decades ago. As Miss Reynolds read through the entries, she learned that Claire had been a lonely child who spent most of her time in the library. The diary revealed that Clara had a secret. She was in love with a boy who didn't even know she existed. She would write about him every day, watching him from afar, but never gathering the courage to speak to him. One fateful day, Clara had written a final, desperate entry. She had decided to confess her feelings, but was heartbroken when she saw the boy with another girl. Overwhelmed with sorrow, she had taken her own life in the library. Mrs. Reynolds was moved to tears. She knew she had to do something to help Clara's spirit find peace. She decided to organize a small memorial for Clara, inviting the students to join her in honoring the forgotten girl. As they read passages from the diary and lit candles, the cold spot in the library seemed to warm up, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. After the memorial, the strange occurrences in the library ceased. The books stayed on the shelves, and the shadows no longer haunted the students. Mrs. Reynolds felt a sense of peace, knowing that Clara's spirit had finally found rest. But every now and then, late at night, she would find a single candle lit in the corner of the library, as if Clara was still watching over her beloved sanctuary, grateful for the kindness shown to her long after her death. Jury 3, Freetown. The ghost of the music room. Mr. Davis was the music teacher at Jefferson High School, position he had held for nearly 20 years. The music room was his haven, filled with instruments and sheet music, a place where creativity and passion flourished. But it was also the site of a tragedy that left an indelible mark on the school. The music room had a grand piano, an instrument that had been donated by a former student named Lily. She had been a prodigious talent, a pianist with a bright future ahead of her, but Lily's life was cut short when she was involved in a fatal car accident on her way to a competition. The piano was left in the music room as a tribute to her memory. Mr. Davis often stayed late, composing music or grading assignments. One night, as he was working on a new piece, he heard the faint sound of the piano playing. He looked up, confused because he was the only one in the room. The music was soft and melancholic, a melody he recognized as one of Lily's favorite pieces. He approached the piano, but the keys were still. The music stopped as soon as he reached for the lid. Shaking his head, he dismissed it as his imagination and went back to his desk. But the next night, the same thing happened. The piano played by itself, the haunting melody filling the room. Determined to uncover the truth, Mr. Davis installed a camera in the music room. He reviewed the footage the next day and was stunned by what he saw. The piano keys moved on their own as if an invisible hand was playing them. The melody was unmistakably Lily's. Mr. Davis decided to investigate further. He spoke with former students and colleagues who had known Lily. They all spoke of her talent and her tragic death, but no one had any explanation for the ghostly music. He sat and discovered an old letter hidden inside the piano bench. It was from Lily, addressed to her parents, expressing her fear of failure and her desire to make them proud. Mr. Davis realized that Lily's spirit was still tied to the piano, her unfinished dreams keeping her from moving on. He decided to hold a concert in her honor, inviting her family, friends, and current students to celebrate her life and talent. During the concert, as the students played Lily's compositions, the atmosphere in the music room changed. The air seemed lighter and a sense of peace settled over the room. Mr. Davis could almost feel Lily's presence as if she was finally at rest. After the concert, the ghostly music ceased. The piano remained silent, no longer haunted by the tragic melody. Mr. Davis felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that he had helped a talented young soul find peace. The music room became a place of inspiration once more, a testament to Lily's enduring legacy. But on quiet nights, when the moonlight streamed through windows, Mr. Davis could still hear a faint of the haunting melody, a reminder of the young pianist whose spirit had finally found its harmony.